Good morning, class. Am I audible?
Good morning, yes, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. Is there any noise in my background or is my voice clear?
Clear, ma'am.
Is it clear? Is my voice clear or some noise is there in my background? I'm not using
No,
earphone
ma'am.
right
It's
now.
clear, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So let's do a quick revision of what we were studying in the last lecture. Okay. Um, In the last lecture, we started with UML, okay, Unified Modeling Language. We try to understand that why is it called language, okay? Though it is notation based, diagram based, then why is it called as diagram? That is what we tried to study in the last lecture, okay? We found that prior to UML also there were various design based language, but after UML, since the inception of UML is the time when inception of UML was the time when different organizations started using diagrams with same sort of notation for some specific task. Okay, we found that the first standard notation based language was your UML 1.0 version, Unified Modeling Language 1.0 version. After that, we have UML 2.0 version. Okay, so now UML is usually used for your object-oriented programming based languages. Okay, and then we saw that different notations are being used. For example, here for class diagram. Prior to that, we saw that your entire operation of UML is divided into different categories. Like to represent users view, we have users view. To represent what are the implementation requirements, we have implementation view. To know the deployment environment, we have deployment view, implementation view, etc, etc, okay, and structural view. And then we found that each of the view has a rich set of collections of diagrams. Okay, and then we saw and then we I mentioned that from all the views we will not be exploring all the diagrams. However, we will select only two types of views. One was your user view and the other was your structural view. Okay, so your structural view have class diagram and object diagram. We will be discussing only class diagram. And in your users view we have use case diagram. Okay, so in the last lecture, we started and we explored class diagram, wherein we saw that a class is represented with a rectangular box with three compartments, wherein the first compartment is dedicated for the class name, the second compartment for the variables, member variables, wherein you have to mention whether the variable is of which modifier. After that, you'll also have to mention the prototype of each variable, okay, or data type of each variable, then the variable name. And in the third compartment we have the methods. Again, for the methods we have modifiers, we have prototypes, and then we have the name of the method. Okay, so connecting these different classes of the same project, we have different types of relationship. Okay, so this relationship can be established using one simple association link, generalization, specialization, aggregation, etc. Okay, so after we explored all of this, we saw a couple of diagrams, two, three class diagrams to understand how is a class diagram drawn. Okay, so what are the various things that has to be kept in mind while drawing a class diagram? Okay, that was from your structural view, that how does the structure of a project looks like. Okay, so looking at the structure with the help of a class diagram, the programmer or the project developer will come up with their various implementation requirements. Okay, but when we take the when we take try to understand the need of the user, we do not focus on structure, implementation, deployment at that time. Okay, when we interact with the user, when a proposal comes in, we try to understand the need of the user. The simplest diagram that is chosen to understand or to draw the user's requirement is done with the help of a use case diagram. Okay, that comes under your user's view. So your user's view is the view which tries to understand and deploy the need of the user. जब user देखेगा, you have to understand. If you're asked to draw a use case diagram, you should not think as a developer or as a programmer. However, you should be able to think it as the user's view. User किस तरीके से देखता है एक project को, like that. Okay. So that is what we are going to discuss in today's lecture. Okay, that is your use case diagram. Is my presentation slide visible to you all?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we're going to discuss today under users view we have use case diagram. So now in use case diagram it is used for capturing the functional requirements of a system. A system what are its functional requirements, that is what we try to capture using the use case diagram. Okay, so it is typically an interaction between, always remember, the user and the system. How does a user interacts with the system? Because by the end of the day, the system is developed for user. So use case diagram, the purpose of use case diagram is to see how does a user interacts with the system. Okay, so that it does, use case diagram does by capturing some user visible function. User जब देखता है उसको कौन कौन सा function दिखता है, that and achieves a discrete goal for the user. So what is the goal? Like for example, if you are designing a you are to develop a ATM machine के लिए software. Okay, so is user bothered about what are the methods you are using? Is user bothered about how many classes you will have? How will the class interact with one another? What are the objects? No, the user is not bothered about that. User knows its pain, it goes to the system. So how does that now user interacts with the system? What are the various components of that ATM machine? That is only user bothered about. Okay, so we'll have to achieve a discrete goal for the user, keeping in view only the need of the user. Okay, uh, the distinction between the user goal and the system interaction is, the system interaction is the low level work that ultimately achieves the user goal. Okay, what does this mean? This means your system interaction based whatever diagrams we have that works behind the scene, to ultimately achieve what the user has demanded from the project. Okay, so these are the various notations that are used in use case diagram. Okay, always remember we have few very important thing, that is your actor. Okay, actor is represented by a stick man. You cannot use eyes, nose, mouth here. The stick man has to be like a stick man with no special features, only hands, legs, and its head. Okay, and its backbone. Only that many features can be there. Use cases, this ellipse is called as use cases. Now what is a case means different scenarios. Use case means now these scenarios must represent some form of usage that will be showing the functionality with respect to the user. Okay, so that is why it's use case, a case that is with respect to the user. Okay, so now we establish a relationship between actor and these use cases by a straight line. That is called as your association. Okay. So now each association may extend some property. Okay. That is called as your special case. For example, if your use case is your date of birth, okay, 0202 1990, then this will extend age, because from 1990 you can calculate age. So that will extend, will be this extends will be age. From here it can extend the value age. Okay. So now common behavior uses. For example, if this use case represents, let us say it's winter. Okay, so let's say it's winter. Here you have warm pant, warm clothes, etc. Then use case uses all of this to keep us warm during winters. We can use all these things. Okay, so that common behavior can be represented with uses. So if it is an extended property within two pairs of angular braces, you have to write extends keyword. If it is some common behavior within a pair of angular braces, you have to write uses. Okay. So now if some use case contains some action, then that you must write includes within two pairs of angular braces. Okay, for example, include will be like let me think of an example. Okay, so if this is library, okay, so if this is library, this will include books. Okay, this will include books. Yeah, university है तो department को include करेगा. If this use case represents department university, you can include, you can write down arrow with empty arrowhead, and within two pairs of angular braces you can write down includes. Library includes books. So if it's an included property, you will write include. If it's a common property, you write uses. If it's a spatial property, you will write extends. If it's an extended property. Okay, so these are the various notations that are used in use case diagram. So if use case notation of use case diagram is clear and I can move to the example, then write in the chat box clear. One more. Okay. So now let's move to the diagrams of your use case diagram. So exam later on when we will proceed with the next topic that we'll be discussing is constructor. So when I'll teach you constructor, I'll tell you, okay, now for this particular lab problem, you will draw class diagram. Now for this particular lab program, I will give you an aim and then I'll tell you, okay, you draw a use case diagram. Okay, so that's how we will practice. Here in last class for class diagram, I discussed 3 class diagrams. So for use case diagram, let's see how many I have in those slides. Okay. Then while we will do the lab programs, you can have your practice sections. In exam, you may be given like for a flight system, draw use case diagram and draw class diagram, or maybe just class diagram, or maybe use case diagram. Always remember, for any system, drawing a use case diagram is not sufficient. Use case diagram only represents the user's view. So when you are to develop a project, अगर आपने final year project में you will draw some diagrams, okay, and then you choose to draw a use case diagram, then you will also need to have some other form of diagram, maybe implementation, structural, deployment, environment, etc. Okay, use case diagram alone will not be sufficient. So this is one example. Okay, so here we have patient monitoring system. So you have been asked to develop a patient monitoring system. Okay, so what is the first step towards developing a use case diagram is identifying the actors. Okay, these are called as actors, identifying the actors. And then you will have to draw a rectangular box. At the bottom of the rectangular box, you'll have to give the name of the system. Okay, what does this system represents? You'll have to write that name. Okay, so the first steps towards drawing a patient monitoring system is identifying who all will be using this patient monitoring system. We will have the physician, the doctor. Okay, we will have the service receptionist. Okay, service receptionist. We will have a chart recorder. Okay, our nurse, a ward boy, maybe a doctor who will represent a chart. You might have, if you have visited any hospital, you might have seen at the leg side of the patient in a clipboard, there is a chart that records all the patient's detail. Okay, and the patient himself. Okay, and then because we are designing a monitoring system, there will be a remote display. Okay, ये एक software है. So एक display तो होगा, remote display, where all the patient's details will be displayed. Okay, so we are discussing for patient monitoring system. If you have gone to the railway station or airports, then you might have seen there is also one railway monitoring system or airport monitoring system. When in the serial number they give the list of the names of different flights arriving and your destination and their status, if they are on time, if they are late. So that is again a monitoring system. A monitoring system is a system where we display details of various things. Okay, so you'll also have to keep in mind what have you been asked to design. Okay, You can practice for airport monitoring system and railway monitoring system. Okay, so let's discuss now. So we have identified the various actors. So now what will be the various roles of these actors? So these roles, these functions will give us the use cases. This is called as use case, which will represent the functions of these actors. Okay, function. There could be a relationship between these two. For example, you can have a relationship here between a physician and the patient, because a doctor will check the patient. You can have that association here as well. If you do not want to have any association but they have a relationship, for example, in this case, doctor and patient will obviously have relationship, and if you're not showing it through association, then that relationship you must be able to show it with the help of use cases and the connections between them. Okay, so now what does a physician do? A physician will monitor normal cardiac function. Okay, because we are doing only for ECG machine. Okay, we are doing only for ECG machine, so we will focus on the ECG related components. Okay, so ECG means the device electrocardiograph. Those who don't know, ECG means electrocardiograph that generates the graph or reads the heart activity. Okay, how is the heart performing? It reads that. So now physician will monitor normal cardiac function. Okay, but it will also trigger on abnormal event. Okay, अगर normal है तो ये read करेगा, and if it's abnormal event then it will trigger on abnormal event. Okay, so now I told you this could extend some. अगर इसने अलग से एक extend is also possible. From here we can have some extend properties here, or the extended property could be one of the inbuilt use case function only. Okay, so if there is a trigger on some abnormal event, if there is a trigger on some abnormal event, then what is the extended property? The extended property is you will have to monitor until normal cardiac function. Okay, you will have to monitor until normal cardiac function is there. Okay, so the third property is, okay, so after whether it's normal or it's abnormal, you will have to print out ECG history. Whatever is the ECG history, you will have to print out. So if the physician triggers on abnormal event, अगर एक abnormal event हुआ तो physician patient के पास जाएगा. Okay, then it will extend. That means the physician will look until the normal function is there to lead the patient until to the normal functionality. The physician will use the ECG history. Physician हार्ट के एक्टिविटी को कैसे जज कर पाएगा? Based on the ECG history. So for that they will take out the printout. So to trigger abnormal event, what will it use? It will use the printout of the ECG history. So that are the use cases of the physician. Okay, so now what does the service receptionist do? Service receptionist will provide various service functions. Okay, you may interact with them, you may ask them to let one doctor visit them or a nurse visit them. So they will provide various service related functions. Okay, and also your service receptionist on timely basis needs to upgrade their software. Okay, so again, upgrading the software is the extended property of service function, because if we are using any software, okay, if we are using any software and that is getting updated, okay, or upgraded, then that is the functionality provided by the service provider. Okay, so now to provide this service function, it uses various error log. How can you update existing system? How can you better the service that is currently being provided? By reading the various cons of your existing system. What are the errors? What are the various problems? You can use all that log to provide good service. Okay, so that is the job of your service reception. So now We have remote display. Who, what all can you see in the remote display? Okay, so this actor remote display is a non-living thing. Okay, it's a display unit. So here you can see normal cardiac function, you can see abnormal event. Okay, so whether it's normal or abnormal, you can see in the remote display. That means whether your flight is on time or off time, you can see it, on time or delayed, you can see on that same system. Okay, remote display. So now next is a patient. Okay, so now it depends. Okay, it depends whether you want that patient to see whether the cardiac functionality is normal or not normal. If you think it should not be shown to the system, patient, because if it's abnormal, then this patient will panic. If you think that way to develop your monitoring system, if the user they are asking that putting the demand, then you can break this association between the patient and seeing the functionality. Okay, patient से आप ये छुपा सकते हो. It's complete entirely up to you guys what you decide to do. If you want to keep patient uninformed about them, because if it's abnormal, they may panic. It may result in worse condition. Okay, so you may hide this. So it's entirely up to the developer. Okay. So next is the chart recorder. So what does the chart recorder do? It will record, okay? It will record the ECG history, considering it's an ECG machine. So now it's a patient monitoring system, okay? So now this patient monitoring system, actually the name is wrong. I should have written it as ECG monitoring system, okay? Because if it's a patient monitoring system, then we should have the use cases for various other things like blood pressure, ECG, the basic things you'll have to consider: blood pressure, sugar, ECG, and oxygen level. These four components must be there. Okay, so you can say that this example is for ECG monitoring system. What you can do is you can take it as an assignment and then upgrade this ECG monitoring system as a patient monitoring system. The basic patient monitoring system is your blood pressure, oxygen, ECG, and your sugar level, because these are the four components that are always recorded in the monitoring system. Okay, so is it clear? Your use case diagram clear hua? If yes, write in the chat box, and all the relationship.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you Shivangi, Pravesh, and Shivam. Thank you Chandni. Okay, let's take one more example. Okay, so here now I'll not focus too much, I'll just give a brief one. Okay, so this one is a very small diagram. For cellular telephone, the use case diagram will be very complex, just to show you what often after some time the students comes to me and they tell me कि ma'am extend or include में confusion हो रहा है. Okay, so for that this chart has been this point has been added. यहाँ पे एक नया add कर दिया है मैंने, so that student can see कि extend क्या होता है. Okay, so this is not in detail or in depth use case diagram. Okay, this is just to show you the what does an extends look like. So I have a cellular network, I have a user. Okay, so with this cellular network, what all can be the use cases? With this cellular network, we can place phone call, we can receive phone call. Okay, so now with user, okay, so this user can again place phone call with their mobile phone, they can receive phone call, and they can use scheduler. Okay, so with cell phone we can use various types of scheduler: alarm, notes, messages, etc, etc. Okay, so now when I can place phone call, obviously if I have another functionality like place conference call. Okay, so if I am placing a conference call, see here, you need to understand place phone call. See here the arrowhead, it is not extending place conference call. Okay, however place conference call is extending place phone call. See where towards which direction we have the arrowhead. That means if we are placing conference call, that means it is automatically extending the property of placing phone call, क्योंकि conference में भी हम तो phone ही कर रहे हैं. Okay, लेकिन अगर phone कर रहे हैं, then it may not be a conference call. Okay, so that's why arrowheads it's towards place phone call. Okay, so again receive phone call we have. Okay, so while we are receiving phone call, the other person may be trying to call us. So receive additional call is the extended property of received phone call. Okay, so is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Shivam, Rajesh, Chandni, Shivangi. Okay. So what are the various application of this? Okay. So the application is already I've actually told you in the beginning when I was telling you about use case diagram. Okay. Application is to model the context of a system, system actors and their interaction with it, to model the requirements of a system, what system should do, independent of how it is done, point of view outside of a system. Because when a project reaches to the companies, let's say TCS, okay, when TCS will view at that project, they will view it with regard to the implementation view. How are we going to implement it? Deployment view, environment view, okay, structural view. That is there. We can say all this as your business aspect. Okay, but when a users view a software or any application, users views that application with the users view. That is, how well can I use it? What are the various functions is it providing to me? How do I want to use it? मैं कैसा चाहती हूँ मेरा system बने? Okay, so it is a unique representation of any project we can say. Okay, so steps is often students gets confused, so we have steps here. The first is capture normal case first. Normal चीज क्या है? What are the various normal case like phone call, place call, send message, फोन में और क्या क्या होता है, अपडेट सिस्टम्स, okay, calculator, etc. So capture normal case first. Okay, then for every step ask, so for every use case that you have done, see what can go wrong, उस यूज केस डायग्राम में क्या गलत हो सकता है. So according to that you will get extend, include and your uses. Okay, how might this work differently? Again, if you are placing a call, it could be a conference call or not. So there इसका what is the unique thing on that? How might this work differently? Will also help you to further explore the use cases. Okay, each variation is plotted as an extension. अगर किसी भी चीज में थोड़ा सा वेरिएशन है, you will get the extension of the use case in the form of includes, extends and uses. Okay, so now you can have common behavior can be encapsulated in another use case to be used by other classes. I've already mentioned. After creating the diagram, write a generic scenario or a step in use cases already. Okay, so this is one example of your online shopping. Okay, so when we have online shopping, why we have online shopping here is, if you remember, we have done the class diagram. Okay, so this one I got it from the internet. So class diagram किया हुआ है हमने online shopping के लिए. So for that class diagram, what sort of use case diagram can we probably have? Okay, so for online shopping you can see that we have registered customer, we can have new customer, so we can have relationship within the actors also, as I've already told. Now new customer will use the web service, this new customer will be your web customer only. Okay, so your web customer can be new customer, your web customer can be a registered customer. You can buy it as a guest login or you can buy it as a registered customer. Okay, so your web customer could be a registered or unregistered user. Okay, so next is we will have a system where we will authenticate the service with phone numbers, user ID, password, and then we have an actor who will provide the identity. For example, if I'm logging in, so I will give my details, so that has to be authenticated. For that we need an actor. So now you can say, you can remove this credit, you can write down, because I got it from the internet. Okay, you can simply write down payment service. You can have one actor, you can remove both of these, you don't need these both of these. Okay, you can write down payment service. Okay, so payment service could be various. Okay, so now what are the use cases? We will view the item. Okay, so we will view the item, and then we will make some purchase. We will make purchase from the item that we have viewed. Okay, so after making purchase, sorry, we will check out. Okay, so view items, make purchase, we will check out them. Okay, so you can have make payment. One more use case here, this diagram is wrong actually. You will also need to, you must have a payment module here. Make purchase, make payment, and then only check out. Okay, so now if somebody wants to register, then the client can register. The registration details needs to be authenticated with the email ID or OTP in the mobile phone. Okay, so if there is a new customer, they can choose to register themselves. Okay, so this is for your online shopping. This is all about your use case diagram. So if you have, and don't take this good day, okay, we have more to discuss. So if you have any questions from class diagram and use case diagram, I'm opening the questions and session for like next 2 minutes. If I get none, then I will tell you what is the next topic that we are going to discuss. Is it clear? Do you have any question? If it's clear, write down clear. If you have any question, please write down what is the question. Thank you, Shivam. Thank you, Madan. Clear till now, ma'am. Okay, thank you. One. Thank you, Rajesh. Thank you, Madan. Thank you, Krishna. Thank you, Chandni. Okay, class. So with this, we have finished the first chapter um, uh, of your syllabus. Okay. So before I forget to make the announcement, on Saturday you will have your sessional. Okay, Saturday को आपका sessional 1 होगा, and then the syllabus would be whatever I'll teach until Friday. Friday तक मैं जितना भी syllabus cover करूँगी will be the syllabus of your sessional 1. Okay, is it clear? Okay, and those who have not joined today, आपके group में भी डाल देना, so that those who have not attended today's lecture will come to know. Okay, so now class. Till date, okay, so till date whatever we have studied somewhere somehow, अगर आप ने join किया, if you have not attended classes, you will see it from somewhere. It's okay, you can understand, you can learn it from here and there. There are few topics, specific topics of Java, which I would say be regular and listen to the lecture carefully. Okay, so these topics are constructors. Okay, constructors, method overloading, okay, method overriding, multi-threading, interfaces, okay, interfaces. So these 5 topics are very important. Okay, so I would ask you कि अब जो topic हम पढ़ने जा रहे हैं आज के बाद, those are the unique topics. Okay, so I would suggest you कि जितना हो सके उतना classes regular बनो, because all the topic that we are studying it will be unique. But क्या होता है कि इन 5 topic में students confuse हो जाते हैं. Students confuse themselves between this topic. In the exam, when I ask method overloading, they write overriding. When I ask overriding, they write constructor. When I'm asking constructor, they are talking about multi-threading. Okay, so all the topics from here are unique, but on these 5 topics, students gets confused. Okay, so listen to the lecture carefully. So now, considering you have no queries from today, so the next topic that we are going to discuss today is your constructors. Okay, constructor. ये मैंने डायरेक्टली नेट से लाके डाल दिया है यहाँ पे, so that आपके दिमाग में ये घुस ही जाए. Okay, so what is a constructor? Okay, constructors are your special member functions of a class. Okay, your constructors are special member functions of your class, which is just like methods, but they are also called as special method. There is a reason why it is called special method. Okay, they are called in Java. There we have something called as members. There are two members in Java. Okay, there are two members in Java. One is the member variable. One is the member variable. Another is the member method. Why? Because a class is defined by its members, that is variables and the methods. Okay, so each block of a class will have two members. One is the member variable, other is the member function. Okay, so now constructor here is a special type of member function. एक स्पेशल फंक्शन ही है, लेकिन ये है स्पेशल टाइप ऑफ मेंबर फंक्शन. ओके, now when we declare a constructor, it gets automatically invoked whenever you create an object. So if I have class A, for class A, if I'm creating an object A1, so the moment I create an object, okay, so the moment I create an object, this special method of Java, which is also called as constructor, okay, it gets automatically invoked. It gets auto invoked. जैसे ही आप एक ऑब्जेक्ट बनाते हो, ये स्पेशल मेथड या तो कंस्ट्रक्टर ऑटोमेटिकली इन्वोक्ड हो जाएगा. However, if you have non-special method, for example, if you have void get, so this is not a special method. Okay, so void get for class A, let us say for this class A, I have void get. Then how do I invoke this method with the help of this object? So this was your A1.get. I invoke this method get with the object. But for this special method constructor, we don't need to invoke like this. The moment, if I have a special method that is the constructor, the moment an object is created, it gets invoked automatically. How? I will show you. Okay. So now there are two types of constructors. Okay, there are two types of constructor. One is your default constructor, one is your parameterized constructor. What are they? I will teach you. Okay. Now your constructor have some special functions. Okay. So now there are some special properties of this special method that is your constructor. First, they have the same name as that of class. Whatever is the name of the class, the same will be the name of that method. And if the class name and the method name is same, that means it's a special method that is called constructor. Okay, for example, if I have class named A, then the name of the method will be A only. Okay, so now the second property is they does not have any return type, not even void. So now this special method, that is your constructor, will not have any return type, not even void. Okay, so what is the need of this constructor? The need is they are used for initialization of the objects. We need to initialize the objects, because when you declare a variable, you need to initialize it. When you declare a method, you need to initialize it. So when you declare an object, if you need to initialize it, so we need the constructor to initialize the objects. Okay, for example, can you use integer variable a like this? No, you do init a, and then if you will not use init a in your program, that means you're not initializing it. Okay, a को यूज नहीं कर रहे हो, अगर इसमें कुछ भी नहीं डाल रहे हो, that means you're only declaring, not initializing it, then you will be shown, you will be prompted in the message, this code is not reachable or not used, so you'll have to remove it. So that means it is initialized with some other variable or with some values. Okay. Similarly, when you have a method, let us say get, you will initialize it with some body. You will give it something. Okay. So similarly, when you similarly, if I have a class sample. Last time in the sample we read various types of inputs. Okay, so I have class sample. So I want to execute it. So let's say it runs one of the methods here. So what do? I write down sample का object चाहिए मुझे उस method को run करने के लिए. So I write down sample as. So will this object is right now only declared. This object is right now only declared, just like the way you have done integer a. You have not initialized it. Okay. Just like the way you have to initialize every variables, every method, you have to initialize this object. So how do you initialize how do you initialize a variable? By giving some values. How do you initialize a constructor? By creating an object. So declared an object, you have to create it. How do you create? Because it's new. So you call the new operator. And then you call the name of the class with a pair of parentheses. So now this is constructor. See here, a constructor is a special method, because what is a method? Anything that comes with a pair of parentheses, not square bracket, not angular bracket, not braces. Anything that comes with a pair of parentheses is your method. So see here, I have a pair of parentheses here. So this is a method. But this method is a special method. Why? This method has the same name as that of the class. Now this method has same name as that of the class. It has no return type, not even void. And now it is initializing the object. The object S is now being initialized by this constructor sample. If you remember, when I created the object when I was explaining you the features of OOP, that was the first time I created an object, and I told you this is something called as constructor. I'll teach you when we will reach that chapter. So this is your constructor. So is the theory behind constructor clear? Initialization, invoking, it is important. If it's clear, I'll go for an example. एक छोटा सा program लेंगे हम to understand default and parameter. If it's clear, please quickly write in the chat box. It's clear. Okay. So class, from now onwards, what will happen is, I have shown, I think I have written 5 or 6 programs. I've shown you how to save, how to execute everything. Okay. So now I will teach you various topic of Java. Okay. Like from today onwards, हम लोग जैसे ही constructor and all पढ़ेंगे. So even if I forget to tell you, now you'll have to implement it. आपको लैब में मैं जो जो भी आपको यहाँ पे पढ़ाती जाऊंगी हर चीज को आपको लैब में इम्प्लीमेंट करना पड़ेगा. You'll have to execute. Now from today onwards, I will not execute and I will not show you anything until and unless I need to execute and show. For example, in the coming topic like multi-threading, उसमें output में ही कुछ समझाना होता है. So I will execute multi-threading and show you. The first time we do applet, I need to show you. और applet के बाद जब भी बाकी applets होगा आप लोगों को खुद करना पड़ेगा. So constructor also, I will write the program, I'll explain the theory and all, but execution is your lab work and you will do it. Okay. So in the theory class, I may do it compile time. Okay, in the lab you will have to do it runtime. Of course, for constructor, the whole idea is compile time only. तो आप compile time ही करोगे, लेकिन बाकी मेथड ओवरलोडिंग, मेथड ओवरराइडिंग, मल्टी थ्रेडिंग, एप्लेट्स एक्सेट्रा हर चीज आपको रन टाइम करना है. तो अगर मैं भूल गई देन also you will by default it's a lab work. Okay, for example today I'll teach you default constructor and parameterized constructor. आपको दोनों लैब में करके सबमिट करना है. एंड आफ्टर योर फर्स्ट सेशनल में आपका फर्स्ट लैब कॉपी का अभी तक जितना भी हुआ है उसका मैं आप लोगों को रिकॉर्ड मांगूंगी. आफ्टर लैब सेशनल आई गिव यू द डेट, यू विल हैव टू सबमिट. ओके, so now are we ready to learn constructors, default constructors?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
मेरा नोटपैड अच्छे से दिख रहा है आप लोगों को?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let's create a class. I'm creating a class first. I will do default. I told you there are two types of constructor. If you remember, see here, there are two types of constructor. I've told you. Okay, there are two types of constructor. One is your default constructor and another is your parameterized constructor. So first we are going to do default constructor. Okay, example of default constructor. I'm going to create a class named sample. So and by now you know after class you'll have to, let us say, not do sample, let us say student. Let's read some student details. Okay, student. So I'm gonna take some ID. So I have student ID here. Okay, so now for that respective ID I'm going to read some name. So string name. Okay. So now I wish to display those details. So I have here void display method. Okay, so void display method. So now if I write SOP, will it do? SOP means system.out.println. I'm going to write SOP. उसका मतलब होगा system.out.println. आप लोग confused तो नहीं होंगे? I want to do shortcut. Will it be okay, class, if I do SOP for system.out.println PSVM for main function? Or should I write the entire line?
No, ma'am, it's fine.
It's fine, na? Okay, thank you, Rajesh. Okay, so I have here SOP system.out. Please, those who are not listening, आप ऐसे ही SOP मत लिखना नोटपैड में, and then obviously you will get an error. Okay, you have to write system.out.print. Okay, if you write print, then after enter the details आपका उसी पे आएगा, कमांड लाइन की उसी पे आपका वैल्यू आएगा. If you do println, आपका next line में जाएगा, then the value will be entered from there. Okay, so I have your SOP. Let me write down full only. This will be a practice for you guys. System.out.println. Okay, so what I'm printing is I'm printing the ID. Okay, so I'm printing the ID plus Okay, some space and then name. Okay, so whatever your ID and name of the student is, I am printing that. Okay, or else what I can do is your ID is, I can show this message. Okay, your name is. Okay, so I've displayed the ID and I've displayed the name. Such a class, I'm getting one very important call. Please give me 1 minute. Hello. Sorry guys, and thank you for understanding. So let's start again. Okay. So I've printed this one. Remember, we are studying default constructor. Okay. So यहाँ तक we have a class, we have now a method. Okay. So now I'm gonna write public static. I need the main function, public static void main string args. Sorry. In function, we open a brace. So now let's create an object. Okay, so let's create an object so that we can run this object variable. Okay, so our object method, we can run them. Okay, so of course for that we need to create an object. So to create an object, what do we do? See here, those who do not know creation of an object until now, you still have a chance to learn once more. See here, to create an object, what do? We call the name of the class and then we give just like to declare a variable, what do? You write the data type is integer and then you write the name of the variable. Similarly, to create an object, you write the data type. We create an object for a class. So the data type is of by default class. So student, let us say S1 is the name of the variable. That is the name of the object. So we create object with the new operator. Okay. And then here, when we create an object for its initialization, by default, we call a constructor and that constructor has to be called. हमें बुलाना ही पड़ता है. That's why it is called a default constructor. See here, student. So if it was the name of the class, we won't be having a pair of parentheses here, but we do have a pair of parentheses. So this does not qualifies to be called a data type. Class तो एक data type भी है, but now because it has a pair of parentheses, that means it's a method. But here the name of the method resembles the name of the class. That is the reason we call constructor as special methods, because they share the same name as that of the class. I'm going slow. I'm repeating more than 3 times. I hope each point gets clear. Even if you don't understand, You ask me, I will repeat again. Okay, so let me create one more object. Okay, so I have another object here. So this is the way you can create multiple objects. Okay, so now this is called as your this one is your default constructor. Okay, ये है आपका default constructor. Okay, so now let's display whatever is there in the display. Okay, I have your s1 dot display, s2 dot display. Now I'm not giving any values to display here. If you want to give, you can give integer a. Okay, I already हम लोग that I will show you. Okay, so if I have to pass value to this method, from here I will pass here 2. So if it's an integer, 2 will go here. Okay, लेकिन मैं वो अभी नहीं करूँगी. I want to show you something. So for this example, I'm going to keep it vacant. Okay, so I want to show you ये क्या आपको output देता है when we are not passing anything. And when we pass something, that what happens then, वो मैं दूसरे example में आपको दिखा दूँगी. Okay, so we close here the main function. We close here the class. Okay, so if you run this program, the output, if you have to save it with student. Okay, if you run this program, the output that you will get. So the output will be okay. So for the first object will run this when s1 dot display sees from s1 the first object, it will go to the display method. So your id is करके यहाँ पे आएगा. Your id is okay, because this is inside a pair of parentheses, because id you have declared it as integer. Okay, so the what is the default value of integer, because we are not passing any value, so the default value of integer will be displayed, that is your 0. Okay, and in the same line here you have not done \n. If you have done \n, we'll get the output in the next line, but you have continued with the plus sign, so we will continue to go. Your name is, so now name is a string data type. So what is the default value of your string? We know small letter none. Okay, so this is what I wanted to show you, the default values. Okay, so how do we get the default value? So this will be the output of your program. So is it clear to you all? Is it clear to you all? Default constructor class. Class is default constructor clear to you all? Okay. So now let's go for your parameterized constructor. That means now to the constructor we are going to pass some parameters. Okay, so अब मैं ज़्यादा बोलूँगी नहीं, because creating class and all by now you already know that, but I'm also looking at the chat box while I'm typing the program without saying much. If there is anything you can write in the chat box, I will explain right away. Okay, so let me create that same class student. So I'm gonna use that same variable student ID and read the name string name. Now look at here. I'm going to leave some space. The reason is now I'm not going to use the default constructor. I'm going to use a parameterized constructor. So for that, in my previous program, I used a method to read the parameters from the method. I used a user defined method. So now I'm going to use a special method. Okay, so the name of the special method is constructor. So now this constructor will have no return type. Look at here. It does not have any return type, not even void. So now when I do a parameterized constructor, the name of the constructor will be same as that of the class name, and it will not have any return type, not even void. Why? The reason is, if I will do here void, or let us say int, that means for this particular method there are two return types. One is integer, another is class. ओके, क्योंकि स्टूडेंट तो इस यहाँ से आया है कंस्ट्रक्टर, तो इसका तो दो बन जाएगा, इंटीजर और क्लास, एंड ऑब्वियसली वी कैन नॉट हैव टू, so that is the reason here we will have none. So what is the return type of this constructor? The return type of this constructor is the class itself. कि ये पूछा जाता है, you need to know the return type of the constructor. We will not have any return type because the default return type of the constructor is the class itself. Okay, so now because it's a parameterized constructor, I need to pass some parameter. I've given some parameter here. I've given some parameter here. If there is anything that you don't understand, अगर कुछ भी है जो आपको पसंद समझ नहीं आ रहा, तो write in the chat box. So I have here constructor with two parameters. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is, in this ID I will put this I, in this name I'll put this n. Okay, so in this ID I'm gonna put initialize I, and then in the name, okay, in the name variable I'm gonna put n. I hope it is understood till here. नहीं है तो बोल देना. I'm closing this constructor. Okay, let me create one more method, void. I want to display something. I want to pass value to this method while I declare the object. इसको रन करने के लिए ऑब्जेक्ट तो चाहिए. ओके, ऑब्जेक्ट बनाने के लिए डिफॉल्ट कंस्ट्रक्टर चाहिए, तो उसी कंस्ट्रक्टर में डाल देते हैं. इंस्टेड ऑफ क्रिएटिंग वन मोर यूजर डिफाइंड मेथड, अगर ये रीड करना है देन आई नीड वन मोर मेथड, void get. Instead of doing void get, why don't we use the default constructor and just read parameter from that constructor? Okay, why use one more user defined method? Okay, so for that we have this constructor. Now I'm going to display what I'm going to display. I'm going to display your name, your ID is class ID class your name is class name. I hope it is understood till here. समझ नहीं आया तो बोलना. Okay. I've closed the method. Okay, so to run it, what do I need now? To run this program, I need the main function. I call upon the main function. Update static void main string here. Yes, I open the main function. Okay. So now what do? I create the object. Student s1 equals to new student. Let's create one more object. Student s2 equals to new student. You want to create third object, it is also possible. Okay, you want to create one third object, you can do it. So I have it here. Okay, so now what do? I want to display whatever is being there. Okay, but for displaying the id and the name, I must pass the value of the id and the value of the name. ओके मुझे डिस्प्ले करने के लिए आईडी और क्योंकि ऐसे डिस्प्ले करूंगी तो अगेन इट्स अ डिफॉल्ट कंस्ट्रक्टर, इट विल गिव मी 0 and null. So I need to pass value to this id and the value to the name. So what do I do here is in the default, now this is the parameterized constructor. See here, student a pair of parentheses, student a pair of parentheses. Okay, so if it was a method, for example, let me write one method here. If it was like integer get or void get, whatever you want, and it reads integer a comma string name. अगर ये ऐसा होता, integer I comma string name, then what would you do here? With s1 dot get, you would enter id number and the name like this, and then from here ये one I में जाता, id में, ये लेखिका name में जाता, but we do not want it to create this unnecessarily. ये line बढ़ जाता. We can use a parameterized constructor to avoid LOCs, lines of code. So we don't use this approach. Okay, so हमने इसको हटा दिया. Instead we use a parameterized constructor which is capable of doing that and also helps us in decreasing lines of code. Okay, so I need to pass the id and the name. So I pass here id being an integer, I don't need to put double quotes. Okay, so let's say you are, this is 2021, your second year, so you are 2020 batch. Okay, so 2020, let's say 001 is your id and your name is Shivangi. Okay, so Shivangi, I have here Shivangi. So again, 2020 batch, let us say 002 is your ID. Okay, so now I have here Pravesh. Okay, so now this value ID will go to here, will be assigned to ID. The Shivangi here will go to name and will be assigned to name. So again, I have another student here. So if you have more students' name, you can keep increasing this one. Okay, you can keep increasing this one. So now this value has been read by this constructor and being passed to ID and name. So I need to display this ID and name. So I need to run this display function. So how do I run a method in Java? By simply with the help of the object name dot the function name. I need to run another value. So again, object name dot the method. So I close the main method, I close the class. So simply what will be the output? The output will be your ID is this one, your name is this one. Your ID is this one, your name is this one. So see here, because we are passing parameters to the constructor, it is called as your parameterized constructor. Okay, parameterized constructor. Is it clear? Constructor, default constructor, parameterized constructor. now, can we move to the next topic, method overloading? Can we move to the next topic, method overloading?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you can take it, right? Because we started late, हमारा 10-15 मिनट लेट हो चुका था. So considering that we have done only 1 hour का lecture, but still we have done 2 topic, use case and constructor. Constructor में 2 चीज पढ़ा. So if you want me to stop, I can stop here. But if considering only 1 hour class has been taken, if you can allow, if you think you can continue, I will continue. So everyone, please write down continue or stop. Class, can I continue or should I stop? Please write. Stop. Stop. Okay. Okay, then we'll stop here. Okay. So in the next lecture, we will do. Let's do tomorrow, ma'am. Okay, Shivangi. Everyone, in the next lecture, then we will do method overloading. Okay. So thank you, everyone. And those who have no queries,
Thank you, ma'am.
please leave the classroom. Those who may have any, you may post your queries.
Thank you, ma'am.